Hey VC, what's up? It's me, yours truly. I am back to post a quick video here. This is actually going to be a response to my 80's brother, the one and only Adam Lee. Um, those of you that have been in the VC and know Adam know he's one of the biggest 80's nuts ever, which is what I absolutely love about him. And this is his, of course, 180's subs contest. So first and foremost, Adam, congratulations on the 180 subs. Uh, should be more than that, especially as many people I know here in the VC that are big 80's fans. You definitely need to be a part of his channel. So if you are watching this video on my channel and you have not subscribed to Adam's channel, make sure you go check him out. It's just two words, Adam Lee, L-E-E. Go check out his channel and sub over, because again, you won't find a bigger 80's fan anywhere. So I want to jump on this one, which of course is just a total train wreck in my mind when he tried to get us to, you know, pick out 10 of our favorite 80's artists, which of course is my favorite decade ever. And so I knew right away it wasn't going to be easy. So what I decided to do to kind of relieve my stress a little bit, and it still really didn't help that much, I'm actually going to do 3 responses to your video, Adam. I'm going to do just an 80's, it's just in like pop and new wave, 10 artists. Then I'm going to do 10 80's R&B. Then I'm also going to do 10 kind of hair band and metal artists. Because, I mean, just, you know, we look at the 80's in general, there is just so freaking much. Matter of fact, I can't even, I mean, I still having a hard time getting over the bands I'm actually leaving out with what I chose here, because there's just so much great stuff in the 80's. One thing I thought that would help me kind of narrow it down a little bit was I tried to focus on picking out bands or artists that I was really, really into back in the 80's, and not necessarily artists that I've grown to love more and respect more and stuff like that. So that kind of helped narrow it down a little bit as well. Because stuff like, for example, a Bruce Springsteen, you mentioned that in your video. You know, I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. I was a fan back then, but I'm a bigger fan now of his 80's stuff now. You know, stuff like Tunnel of Love and things like that, One Step Up. I just didn't quite get it back then. You know, I saw the videos and I kind of liked the songs and everything, but now it's kind of like all that stuff's on a whole nother level, because I kind of like get it now. So I stuck with artists that I was really kind of digging and they were on the top of my list back then. And still, I'm leaving out quite a few, but I did keep it at 10, so I'm doing good, Adam. First of all, one of the kings of the 80's, I mean, it's hard to argue, Phil Collins, all the great stuff he had after leaving, well, when he's in Genesis, but then of course after leaving Genesis. And he was definitely one of my favorite artists back then. I mean, stuff like, you know, especially like Air in the Night, you know, as cheesy and played out a song as that is, it's still a pretty freaking classic tune right there. So when you talk about 80's, you have to have Phil Collins in that conversation. Another one, and this is one I don't listen to as much now, but again, back then I was really, really into this band and mainly this album. But Night Ranger, I don't listen to them that much now, but I mean, back then, You Can Still Rock in America and When You Close Your Eyes and all those great tracks. I mean, I was really into this band back in the 80's. So that's one I have to pick out. In fact, I'm gonna leave this out, because again, I haven't listened to that in quite some time. Oh, this was one that just, again, I still love these guys today. Saw them in concert about a year ago, but yeah, back in the 80's, I was all about REO Speedwagon. Oh my goodness. And ever since when you know, I'm a huge 80's movies fan as well, and from the time I first saw Last American Virgin, that soundtrack just always, I mean, it just blown my mind from the first time I ever saw that movie. And one of the main songs on there was Keep On Loving You by REO Speedwagon. And so that song to me was all things 80's, and I played it a gazillion times back then. So I love REO Speedwagon. The next one here, probably more so Journey, but I'm going to say kind of Steve Perry in general. Because I mean, I wasn't as into his solo stuff back then. I mean, I knew Oh Sherry and I heard, you know, Foolish Heart, and those were hits and I listened to them. But a lot of the backtracks on this, stuff like Go Away or Captured by the Moment, I mean, that stuff I didn't discover until, actually, I would say just a few years ago, actually. But just in general, Steve Perry with Journey, I mean, Journey was a huge, huge band for me back in the 80s. Next, another band, again, this is one that kind of floored me. I think I told this story once before, too. You know, sometimes you have those moments where you hear songs for the first time and they just, like, as a kid, totally blow your mind and just affect your life for the rest of your life. And this was one of the songs and one of the groups that did that. And I'll never forget this. Coming home from school on the bus, there was a guy named Jimmy. And he was kind of the rocker dude in our neighborhood. You know, he was the guy that used to, you know, everybody had the tight rolled jeans back then, but he's the guy that, you know, wrapped the bandanas around his legs and always had the blue jean jacket on. And, you know, he was just kind of like, you know, the rock and roll kid. Really cool guy. But he lived right up the street from me. We rode the bus home. He would always have his little, you know, box or whatever. And I remember this day that we were coming home. He played two songs that just had me on the bus going, I mean, just like life-changing. One of those songs was Shot in the Dark by Ozzy Osbourne. I heard that for the first time that day on the bus. And the second song that he played was by this band, Outfield. And it was Your Love. And again, I remember hearing both those songs on the bus that day, and I was just like, holy cow, what is that? And I mean, it's never been the same since. And so, yeah, the Outfield, I was huge with them back in the 80s. All thanks to Jimmy. Here's another one. Howard Jones. I was a big fan of his back in the 80s. You know, he had stuff in a lot of different 80s movies, including Better Off Dead. I think like to Get to Know You Well was a good song he had on there. But Things Can Only Get Better and No One's to Blame, which is on his studio album, which I do have. This is the single for Things Can Only Get Better. But yeah, I mean, just epitomized everything that I felt the 80s sound was about. So I loved Howard back then. Arguably the guy I worshiped the most as far as artists back in the 80s, Billy Idol's Rebel Yell. This was the ultimate album for me back in the 80s. First cassette I ever got when I was in 5th grade. I asked for it for Christmas and I got it, and I still have that exact cassette to this day. And yeah, I played the heck out of this album back then. 5th grade, man, that's crazy. And this might actually be cheating. I shouldn't say cheating, but the more I think about it, I wasn't as into this artist back then as I am now. You know, there was one or two songs that I really liked, you know, like In Your Eyes, you know, Peter Gabriel, of course. You know, I really dug that song. But see, I'm saying now it's probably not a great pick, because I do remember back then, I never got Sledgehammer. I mean, I do now, but back then it was kind of like weird video. I don't really get the song, and then stuff like Red Rain and all that. Yeah, I mean, I love him to death now, but maybe I didn't get him quite as much, so I may want to call that an honorable mention for back then. One of the bands that ruled the world back then, 80s wise, Tears for Fears. You know, great stuff on this album, like Mad World, but then of course on you know, From the Big Chair with Shout and all that great stuff. I mean, yeah, you couldn't go anywhere without having Tears for Fears. And then last but not least, this is one that was definitely at the top of my list back then. Boy George, Culture Club. Loved them, loved them, loved them, and still love them to death now. But yeah, I mean, you know, Karma Chameleon, It's a Miracle, Miss Me Blind, that was one I really loved back then. You know, but it wasn't until PE class, 6th grade, this little guy named Corey, I don't remember his last name. He was a short guy. I remember he was like the point guard on the basketball team. He was the first person that told me that Boy George was not a girl. I'll never forget that. Right in the hallway in PE, right outside of the gymnasium, that's when he first told me, 6th grade, Boy George is not a girl. It's amazing how that crap sticks in your mind. But yeah, love Culture Club. I have to put them in there. So again, I mean, so many great things I left out. I mean, when I was just digging through my stacks, you know, skipping over Eddie Money, Steve Winwood, you know, their 80s years were great. Don Henley, Pet Shop Boys. I didn't really know The Cure then, but you know, now huge for me. What else? I mean, just so many different artists. I mean, so much stuff. But those are the 10 that I picked to stay within the confines of your contest. So there you go, Adam. Again, congratulations on 180 subs. And I'm probably gonna, like I said, come back and go ahead and do a video with my 10 R&B faves and my 10 hair / metal / rock, whatever you wanna put it. All right. So there you go, man. Congratulations, and we will talk to you soon.